how do we, or how to ensure there are tangible outcomes at the end of a series of workshops? And that's really cool. I love that question for the main point that you're thinking about a series of workshops, not just a one-off, because it's an easy trap. I think most coaches, consultants, HR leaders can get in the trap of just running a quarterly or 6 monthly or annual workshop, right? And then coming back to it a year later. And especially with these cards, I think it's important to think of it in a series of workshops, or how we continue the conversation. And we'll come back to that because that's a question further down the list as well. But when I read that question, the first question that popped into my mind, funnily enough, was I'd start by asking what outcomes the team were hoping to achieve. We're not going to get to that here, but I would normally start any conversation with a leader when I'm talking about this game. I would be asking probing questions to find out what they wanted to achieve as a team. And I almost retrospectively fit the game to fit that. And I'll talk about that more a few questions down. But the real tangible things that I think are important is, one, the canvas. The emotional culture canvas is a really important tangible outcome at the end of the process, because that, if done properly, that can become a living and breathing artifact. What I mean by that is that you will fill it out through that series of workshops with your team. But recently, Lottie Roberts, who's she's now become a specialist elephant rider. She's done some really cool work, and not actually printing out or typing up the canvas, but actually keeping it alive by writing the answers on Post-it notes. And so this emotional culture canvas sort of has that feeling of it's always evolving, and it's not just something that stays on the wall and it's been written up in stone or in ink, so to speak. And for me, that's a really nice symbol of this thing is going to keep evolving and changing. But certainly getting to the end point of creating that canvas is a really important outcome. But most importantly, the critical few focuses, so that middle part of the canvas. So out of those series of workshops, out of that canvas, what are the 5 or 6 things that you will, as a team, focus on moving forward? A lot of teams will rush over that. They'll just create the canvas and they'll have all these beautiful things and these behaviors and these that apply to the top 5 for each, but they won't go to the point of saying, these are the 5 things we really need to focus on. So finding time to do that is important. That's a really super tangible thing that you need to get to the end of it, to say, as a team, we think these 5 things are the most important ones we want to focus on over the X amount of time. I always insert a time frame there. They might, instead of going, these are 5 things we want to be focusing on just generally, I try to get teams to focus on a specific time frame. So let's say over the next 3 months or over the next 6 months, because that gives you then permission to then come back and reassess and go, actually, now these are the most 6 important things, or 5 most important things. The second part to make sure there's tangible outcomes at the end of a series of workshops is I always say that it's up to the leader to decide if these conversations are going to stay alive, because the leader needs to be deliberate in continuing the conversations, facilitating the ongoing conversations with the game, whether that's weekly retro, intention setting, or the re-evaluating of it after a certain period of time. That's something I just want to continue to impress on people. I had a catch up today with somebody who was interested in going through the game, and I'm pretty upfront with the leaders I talk to and say, listen, we can do this and we can go through these series of workshops, but at the end of it, if you decide that that's enough and you never talk about it again, then you're missing a little bit here, and it's up to you to deliberately keep these alive by creating moments of conversation about it. Saying that though, and this sounds counterintuitive, but I've experienced it, sometimes just going through the process can be the most valuable thing for a team, because these conversations aren't conversations that, or they're conversations that really happen. They really happen. They don't happen very often at all. And so going through this process and opening up these conversations and starting them can be the most valuable thing. And I've struggled with that and figuring out how to articulate that to people, because it does sound a little bit airy-fairy or intangible. But if you did break this workshop up over 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 4 sessions, you've created a whole bunch of conversations that are really valuable that the team have never had before. And that in itself is ironically a tangible outcome of the session, of the series of workshops. Yeah. But the best tangible outcome for me, I think, is to come back and revisit it periodically. So I work with some teams where we go every 6 months, we look back and go, okay, what did we feel in the last 6 months, and then reset it again for the upcoming 6-month period. And that means that at the end of that series of workshops, you've given yourself permission to go in 6 months, we're going to get together as a team and review it and then reassess and change it. I'm a huge believer in keeping this as an evolving thing, not just a set and forget. I think I'm learning more and more with the teams I'm working with, is that's a really simple way to make sure there's always something tangible at the end of it. Because in 6 months' time, we then go, okay, this happened in the last 6 months, and let's reassess it for the next 6 months. Yeah.